Okay, everybody, thank you for joining us today. Many people asked me to make a presentation on the EU-US program on long COVID syndrome. So what's going on? Well, 1% of the population is at home with long COVID syndrome now. Then I'm going to talk a bit about the EU programs. I've developed a treatment that's just for those long COVID syndrome patients where the coronavirus entered the deep brain and destroyed the engrams and neural networks inside the deep brain. I'm going to talk a little bit about my collaboration with ESPA, the European Federation of the 1,400 Medical Spas, linked to a university or a hospital. I'm going to talk about long COVID, how to avoid burnout of your medical staff, your management, and the EU programs on mental health. I'm also into artificial intelligence and robotics, and it can come and help you out. If you have more questions, these are my coordinates or my LinkedIn. So what's going on? So on June 22, at their bi-monthly meeting here in Brussels, the 27 EU ministers of budget and finance were complaining and trying to figure out why they were all missing 1 to 3% of their tax revenues. And the answer was 1% of your national population has long COVID syndrome and is at home. So I want you to let that sink in for a moment. Just calculate, you know, the number, the population of your country, right? Okay, take 1% of that. They're not paying taxes, but they are costing 1 to 2% via your health system, and that's the 3% that was missing. On top of that, 75% of those long COVID patients, they are aged 65 or lower. So they are your senior management. That's not good at all. And that's also where the scale of the problem, there is this other terminology that pops up, corporate COVID. That's everything falls on the shoulders of the remaining staff. And if they fall out due to burnout, well, that's what, for example, industrial and organizational psychologist Patrick Benson refers to as corporate COVID. So on December 13, 2022, the European Commission and the United States government announced to set up a long COVID syndrome program to pool resources and financing. If you want more, just Google it. What is going on? Voila. Here you see the EU Commission and the USA government conference, lots of important people there. Just like you, 2022, 21, 22, you had all these, I was in all these lockdowns to varying degrees. At times I was bored, and I got people asking me about the symptoms that kept popping up from COVID patients with symptoms all over the place. The name long COVID or long COVID syndrome didn't exist yet. So, yeah, well, as a biochemist, cognitive scientist, and previously been working with the coronavirus, I remember that the virus can enter via the lungs and then into the blood and doesn't do all kind of damage. But it can also enter via the nose and the eyes and then follow the neural tracts for odor and vision that lead next to the inner brain and the brain stem. And those places are loaded with the AC2 receptors that the coronavirus uses to enter and destroy the cells. Now, if that coronavirus breaks out there and destroys a typical neural cell with, you remember, 10,000 synapses, talking to 10,000 other neural cells, then of course it destroys those small neural networks of often not more than 150, 50, maybe 5 neural cells, where the engrams, that's the smallest unit of information, on many of our zero set points and scales are located. So for example, what's a normal temperature? Well, the zero set scale, that's 37 and a little bit degrees Celsius. You learned that when you were still in your mom's womb. And then you learned what is a little bit warmer, what is a little bit colder, that's the scale. And what is panicking hot, so that then there is a neural link that has to fire to your panic region in your brain, so that you look what's going on. For example, maybe your hand is touching a hot pan and then you pull away. Okay, that's a reflex, but you have, you know, varying degrees and so forth. So anyway, you have to look and make a decision and so forth. So long COVID syndrome, we now know that it expresses itself through about more than 60 symptoms. And I managed to develop a treatment for those patients where the coronavirus entered the deep brain, okay? But then of course, we found also my colleagues with whom who were asking me questions. They were all like, yeah, but we also hear these stories that long COVID goes away with some patients, so they self-heal. So nobody moved because there's no money involved or to be made, and this may come as a surprise, but we all need to make money. So my treatment, my invention for long COVID syndrome patients where the COVID destroyed the deep brain. First, you have a lot of pictures here. I don't want, I'm sorry, I get remarks. Some people say that I use too many words. Then when I use pictures, then they say I need too many pictures. Then there's not enough pictures. I'm sorry, just skip through. You can see this at 1.5 times the speed on YouTube and everything. I can't be bothered by that anymore. I'm fed up repeating myself here for the 100th time, so bear with me. So I'm going to first do a little recap on cognitive sciences, biochemistry related to the coronavirus, the AC2 receptor, some numbers, some facts, and also I'm in EU programs, Erasmus+, innovations in learning, accelerated memorization, brain hacking, the forgetting algorithm, EU artificial intelligence program and the EU program on dual career athletes, therapists, freedivers. That's actually how I got into my my therapy, the idea for my therapy, and that's how I knew it was going to work, because I've been working with these freedivers and they reset the zero set point for the breathing reflex. So here you see one of these freedivers being a buddy in a swimming pool. Yeah, that's actually one person's brain being taken over or linking up with somebody else's brain, and that's a form of neuro-linguistic programming that's going on. Light hypnosis, that's that kind of stuff. And then here I've been in some other programs on living labs. Just Google that if you don't know what that is. Europa Living Labs. Here the programs on active aging and long living, and then open hardware and sensors connected to an Arduino, open source hardware and software. And then you see here patients in these typical swimming pools, and then yeah, you will see that this long COVID recovery can take 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, maybe 18 months. There's even people from 2020 who are still suffering from long COVID because it hasn't been treated correctly. So the transfer of know-how is really a big issue. Okay, so a little bit serious game. Okay, how many synapses does a neuron have? Well, that's 10,000, so keep that in mind. How many neurons do we have? Well, that's 89 billion neurons we have in our brain. How many possible connections can our brain make? Well, that's estimated to 159 trillion. But what the hell is a trillion? Do you know, by the way, what 10,000 looks like? This is a stadium with 10,000 people. That's how I teach my students, for example. So a neuron has synapses and can talk and can exchange information with each and every single one of these spectators. Can you imagine that? So imagine that coronavirus would destroy a couple of these neurons, and all of a sudden you have 10,000 neurons, other neurons that don't receive any information or input anymore. That's gonna be serious, right? Yeah, here that's some stuff where I explain what a billion kilometers is. So the distance from Earth, and a billion kilometers further than you are in the outer rings of Saturn. You can pause the presentation. Some other nice open source pictures on the Wikipedia from what neurons look like. You can pause that and have a look at that. And here a neuron connecting to a muscle fiber, and then there is an electric pulse. It's very small, but when it arrives at the right spot, it just contracts or does something. And here we have another one, picture that I like a lot, also from the Wikipedia. And then here is another one. And that's here. This region here is highly loaded on these AC2 receptors that the coronavirus uses. So you see, it already starts here in the spine, in the medulla, the pons, the midbrain. Oh my god, and if it gets into that, and we're going to straight into that, here's your nose. So the coronavirus, okay, so you breathe it in, maybe it goes through your lungs, there's all kind of things there, you know. You've seen these pictures where it triggers a mechanism so the cells separate a little bit, and there is fluid that can go into the lungs. You've seen all these pictures, and then people drowning in their own lungs, and then they have no other choice but to put you upside down and put you in a coma and hope that your immune system in these next 6-10 days figures out what the hell is going on and find a way to destroy the coronavirus in your lungs, and that's, yeah, even with a breathing capacity of maybe 15% only, because you're in complete coma, everything has been shut down, yeah, that you can survive, and otherwise unfortunately you're dead. So we're now going to look what happens if the coronavirus follows your nose, and then here we are going to go into your olfactory tract, or in your your olfactory tract, and have a look at where we end up here. So this here, the olfactory tract here, okay. So you see that we are this goes really along the deep brain. So of course this coronavirus doesn't know, okay, most cells are like little boxes, like bricks, and it can get through that, connecting to that AC2 receptor. Now neural cells, they're also cells. They're very weird cells, you know, with these synapses and everything, but they are a cell. They have a cell or a kernel and everything, a nucleus, it's a cell. So it just goes in it, connects with it, destroys it, moves on to the next cell, and then it breaks out here in that region here. That's where your olfactory tract leads to, and where your smell is being processed. So if that is being destroyed somewhere along the line, then all of a sudden your brain forgets how it has to smell. And that's one of these 60 symptoms, right? People who can't smell anymore. Same thing here with the optic tract. Again, people, for example, with long COVID, who then all of a sudden can't deal with changes in light, for example. So coming back to my treatment here that I developed. So we are going to let the brain restore and rebuild the 0 set points and scales that have been destroyed. So what we are going to do is remove, and you remember, right, when you were a baby, when you had to learn when your child learned to walk, there is sensors on the tip of its foot, and when it leans too much forward, it falls over, and then you have receptors on your heels, and that communicates to your brain how much pressure, and if you're not leaning too much backwards, and then you fall backwards. How long did it take you to learn that? How long did it take? Does it take a toddler to learn how to walk? That's like a year, 1.5 years, right? So if those engrams, that whole system with scales and everything, to help it to learn to balance, if that gets destroyed, that's gonna take a long time for your brain. Well, it's not gonna take as much time because you're an adult. You have spare capacity, and you have other support systems and so forth, and your brain has elasticity. You're gonna learn it a lot faster, but it's not gonna be in a day or in 1 week, right? It's gonna take a couple of weeks. So what we are going to do is we are going to remove all the distracting impulses from your other senses. We're going to put you in salt water, so you float, your body gets carried by this heavy, dense salt water, in a lukewarm pool in a medical spa, and we are going to wrap the patient in a full body freediving suit with gloves on your hands, your feet, and even your head, so that you just have your goggles. And we're gonna dim the light in the medical spa, in the swimming pool. Fortunately, when you are underwater, the sounds get filtered out, are dimmed, the tones are much softer, and you are going to hook up your brain with a therapist. And it's just neuro-linguistic programming in a soft form of meditation. And a soft form of not meditation, but hypnotization. Yeah, that's the English word, right? And we are going to have a session in the morning. Then you're going to have a siesta. Very important, because then the blood pressure drops, so that the organs deflate, and it's much easier for all kind of fluids in your brain to rinse out and rinse clean all these places between your uncus and sulcuses in your brain, these undulating parts of your brain. It's the cerebrospinal fluid that can really rinse clean and bring in new fresh elements to build and restore your brain and grow new neural connections, because we're going to give a lot of impulses like that. And we're going to do another session in the afternoon and another one in the evening. And we're going to repeat that 10 days. And we have an algorithm, I have an algorithm that can predict when your brain is going to forget that. So I can, just before your brain is going to forget that, give you another session. So, and that gives a really big signal. You're doing that in group, right? In the swimming pool with the Luke water, the Luke salty water, completely wrapped in these free diving suits. And so by doing the sessions right on the moment, well, a couple of hours or a day before your brain would forget what it has relearned, that gives a very strong signal to the brain that that is something that is important, and it's gonna indicate reinforcing those neural networks that we are trying to regrow back. And then after 10 days, yeah, I think you're good to go back home for 2 months. Of course, we're also going to give you some mental help sessions, group motivation sessions, especially when you're home, that the group motivates you to continue doing your exercises every day, that you're in communication via WhatsApp groups, via Reddit groups, via Facebook groups. We're collaborating with the EU Federation of Long COVID patients. And then after a while, maybe after 2-3 months, you come back to the medical spa to have another session, boost you again. And well, depending on how heavy you have been affected, this can take 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 18 months. And we're also going to help you, we're also linking up with the EU program on artificial intelligence and even robotics. We're going to see in a moment how that can help us as staff. Yeah, so here 1% of the national population has long COVID, 60 symptoms. You just read through this info flash. This is going to be with us for the next 5 years. So imagine, imagine you have to look at this also from us as therapists, doctors, staff in medical spas. I mean, we have to treat like thousands of people per month in every spa, and we have to ask you the same questions over and over again. Okay, thank you for coming by, and how do you experience long COVID? Oh, thank you for sharing that. So you have these 10 symptoms. Okay, can I go over the rest of these plus 60 symptoms? And then the long COVID patient spontaneously falls asleep, some of them. And then, well, after an hour, that's easily going to take you like an hour, right, to go through all these symptoms. If you want to be a little bit friendly and everything, and compassionate and slow medicine with your patient. And you're gonna have to do that thousands of times per month, hundreds of times per day. Times how many years? Yeah, well, the info flash for the next 5 years. I mean, you can imagine that our staff in our medical spas, they are like, what? That's crazy, you know, that's crazy. And that's where this word here is coming from: corporate long COVID, burnout of your most capable staff. So that's where, I know, lots of pictures. Don't panic, I'm going to take you through it. Some people say I'm not using enough pictures. Too many words, too few words. Just skip through if you want to. But here is where we link up with the program on artificial intelligence of Europe, in Europe. So we are going, and also with the EU program on the robotics. So we have apps for you patients, but also for our medical staff, and there is really artificial intelligence behind it. So it asks you questions. Oh, hi, good morning. I see you're logging in. That's for the for our mental our staff in the medical spas, for example. Hi, nice to see you, and how are you today? And ta-ta-ti and ta-ta-ta, and then they get points. The app gives gives them points, and then the artificial intelligence behind it knows what they're dealing with, what is their program for the day, and they also notice, for example, oh, you're still busy with all these therapies, and are you still okay? Do you follow this new therapy there from this Mr. Sven Arts, and do you still know what you, because everybody liked you. I mean, you were with 20 therapists following this therapy, learning this therapy there in the medical spas, and you were really very appreciated by all the other participants. Are you still in touch with them? Because the artificial intelligence, for example, notices, oh, you haven't been in contact with them, with your fellow students there. So maybe that's an indication that you're actually going for straight into a burnout, for example. And then we have a program with mind to mind, and then you can get a call from one of their therapists, for example, to see if everything is still okay, and so forth. Yeah, and then here's also the EU program on robotics. So we're going to try to do as many of those interviews that are repetitive. Why not? If there are some, there is a new generation, right? They're more into gamification, gamified, and they like all these gadgets. So if we can already do a couple of hundreds of those interviews with a robot, yeah, that would be really good. Here you see what a medical spa looks like. So it's really great places to be, to go really deep and regenerate and retransform yourself. Here, Living Labs. I'll just let you look that up yourself. But we're participating in these Living Labs where we're partners. Many EU projects use this technique of Living Labs, where you bring people from different specialties together, from different programs together. Here again, this the open source projects for monitoring and sensors. Here you see some people in the pools here during the tests, and here these pictures, they have to symbolize how it is when you're back home, that you're logging in, that it keeps, that's being fun and so forth. That's pictures I got when I was still in the program on AAL. I'm also in that program on active aging and long living. So here you see me pitching in the EU program on artificial intelligence. So voila, here how AI can help in long COVID treatment, how AI helps long COVID patients reprogramming zero set points and scales in the brain, how long COVID therapy can take a long time, and how AI finds how long COVID patients that need mental support and mental coaching, so we can detect when one of you is phasing out and needs some encouragement. The rest you can read that there. We're also in these other EU programs, serious games, massive online open courses. Yeah, this is how some of these apps look like, how they are being presented. Here already, here 17 December 2021, 305 disinfection robots were delivered to EU hospitals, paid for by the European Commission. And so the next step is what robot can best help us in the EU Commission long COVID decision support system. That's what we are building now with the EU Commission, the Director General of Health, and then the sub team that is dealing with helping to bring people together, and specialists and federations of specialists who are interested to work on this long COVID. So we're building a decision support system, and then we can put that in that AI and in the robot, and he can then understand, oh, probably that person is affected by this coronavirus in these 1 to 5, 6 ways. Number 1 of these 60 symptoms. Number 2, so that's indicating that. So it's and it keeps on learning. Voila. So yeah, we need 1% of the EU population has long COVID now. So half of them need a treatment in one of our 1,400 European ESPA medical spas. We've seen that already. Long COVID expresses itself through 60 symptoms. We use AI, but we need about 140 robots because it's humanly not possible for our medical staff to ask these thousands of patients per month, per spa, the same questions for months without going crazy. Voila, here some other programs on COVID. So we're really, if you're a patient, if you're a long COVID national federation, we are working and we're coming closer. This is the US program in which we work. This is on our ESPA, the European spas. All the places where we have medical spas. So you also see that there are some places where we don't have medical spas. That's of course a problem that we have to solve. And this is my colleague that I keep running into, Patrick Benson. He's an organizational and clinical psychologist from Mind to Mind. And yeah, so he's coming in from the EU programs on mental health Europe. Yeah, here you see some of my colleagues from the Netherlands, from the national long COVID program there. So you see that we discovered there that yeah, if the inner brain has been damaged, then it doesn't make any sense to push these people into a physiotherapist, for example, because you first have to relearn the 0 set points, because otherwise if you push them too hard, then you get these big imbalances here. You see that? Boom, 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 boom. So you're pushing them over their limit. It goes a little bit good, but then they go, they have very deep fallbacks. So you really have to do 10 days of sessions in a medical spa, and then you can rebuild up, and then you can pass them on to physical therapists. Oh, here you see, that's true, I have these these YouTube movies. This is during a siesta, so you really see how the blood, so the blood pressure goes down, and then you have these pulses with every heartbeat, how your brain is being rinsed clean. So that's why it's so important to have sessions of siestas, and why it's very important to sleep your 8 hours and go through these 8 cycles every night for a good restorative sleep. Yeah, and here you see some of these great images that we now can make on how the neurons are firing and how things are firing back and so forth. It's really amazing how much advances we have made. I think I'm gonna leave it to there. So if you need any more information, feel free to contact me via my LinkedIn or via the European spas. You will see that here, European spas, and then post-corona treatments, and then here you go, and here you see my colleagues who have also been tinkering since 2020, 21, 22 with long COVID therapies, some that worked, some that didn't work, and then we discussed why it would work, would not work, and what we could improve and everything. So we've been working on this since a long time in the European medical spas. We're very well organized, and that's of course very useful for the European Commission, because with one email and one phone, one address, namely me, they can reach out and we can be in all these EU programs. Do I have to show you all these kind of things? It's gonna be too long, so I'm gonna keep it to here. Thank you for your attention, and looking forward to your comments and beating this long COVID. Bye bye.